A man named Isaac thought he had landed his dream job when he was hired to work at the prestigious research lab. He had always been passionate about research, and this job seemed like the perfect opportunity to delve deeper into the mysterious world of science. Fresh out of university, full of optimism and excitement, he felt like he had won the lottery. The lab was known throughout the scientific community for its groundbreaking research and top-tier facilities. He will work alongside some of the brightest minds in the field. He felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. However, as he settled into his new role, he discovered that the pristine environment of the lab concealed a darker reality. As days turned into weeks, he started noticing things that didn't quite add up. He would hear hushed whispers among his colleagues, fleeting glances exchanged in clandestine meetings. A feeling of unease started to settle in, a gnawing suspicion that something was amiss. One night he stumbled upon a door that he had never seen before. It was tucked away in a secluded corner of the lab, away from the usual hustle and bustle. The door was locked, but he found a key hidden in a drawer in his office. When he unlocked the door, he descended the stairs into another large room, and what he saw shook him to his core. The lab was conducting horrifying experiments on human subjects. Rows of people were lined up, strapped to tables, their faces contorted in agony. His heart pounded in his chest as he took in the sight of the grotesque experiments. Strange machines beeped and hummed. Monitors flickered with eerie green light, and the air was filled with the stench of fear and despair. The pristine and sterile environment he had once admired was now a chamber of horrors. He realized he was standing in the heart of a grotesque operation, a twisted parody of the noble pursuit of science. His mind raced with questions. How could such atrocities be committed in the name of research? How could his colleagues, people he respected and admired, be a part of this? He couldn't be a part of this. He couldn't stand by and watch these atrocities unfold. Now that he unwillingly discovered this, he had to think in a solution before he became the next participant in their grotesque experiments. As Isaac ventured deeper into the basement, his concentration was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps, a drumbeat of dread echoing in his ears. A figure emerged from the darkness. It was the lead scientist, a figure of authority within the lab. His stern face was etched with lines of ruthlessness, his eyes cold and unfeeling. He was a man who had dedicated his life to science, and in his pursuit of knowledge, he had lost his humanity. The protagonist was caught off guard, his breath hitching in his throat. He watched as the senior scientist's cold gaze swept over the room, taking in the grotesque scene before him. He felt a chill run down his spine as those icy eyes landed on him. He could see the realization dawn on the colleague's face. The brief flicker of surprise quickly replaced by a cold, calculating look. He was trapped, caught in the act. The scientist's cold gaze met his. It was not supposed for you to be here so soon. Anyways, now that you're here, what do you think about this? Marvelous, isn't it? Questioned the lead scientist. This is amazing, replied the protagonist in a very nervous, shaking tone. I can see that you don't feel comfortable, but don't you worry, you will get used to this. These are the trash of our society anyways, and the government has approved this too, continued the lead scientist. What? The government knows about this? Thought Isaac. He knows he is now a pawn in a game he didn't understand, caught in a web of deceit and horror. What are we doing here exactly? Questioned Isaac. You will find out soon enough, replied the scientist. A week later, the lead scientist announces to the whole team the new member of this so-called project. It was Isaac. The team claps loudly and intensively. Congratulations, Isaac! Welcome to the heart of our operations! The lead scientist's voice echoed through the sterile, cold lab as he led Isaac to a viewing platform. Below them, the lab was a hive of activity. Scientists in white coats moved with mechanical efficiency, their actions cold and detached. Isaac watched in horror as the true purpose of the lab was revealed. Pioneering a new era of scientific discovery, the scientist declared proudly, his eyes gleaming with a terrible, ruthless ambition. As he spoke, Isaac's eyes were drawn to the prisoners. Strapped to steel tables, their bodies were subjected to horrifying procedures. Their screams echoed in the lab, a chilling symphony of pain and despair. "Anesthesia?" Isaac asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his throat tight with fear. The lead scientist laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "We're not curing a toothache here. pain is a part of the process," he replied, his gaze fixed on the scene below. Isaac felt his stomach churn, bile rising in his throat. He forced himself to look, to witness the horrors unfolding before him. The lab was not a beacon of scientific progress, but a house of horrors where human dignity was discarded for the sake of experimentation. The prisoners were not patients, but guinea pigs, their humanity stripped away in the name of science. As the reality of his situation sank in, Isaac felt a cold dread settle in his heart. He was trapped in a nightmare, a mere pawn in a bizarre project. The lead scientist turned to Isaac, his cold gaze meeting Isaac's horrified stare. "Welcome to the future, Isaac," he said, his voice echoing in the silent lab. Isaac felt a chill run down his spine. He was not just a witness to these horrors, he was now a part of them. His mind raced, anxiety building up. He needed to find a way to stop this madness. Before we plunge back into the depths of Isaac's daring plan, we'd like to take a moment to ask you to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories. Your support is the fuel that ignites our creative fires, allowing us to bring you more spine-chilling narratives like this one. Sorry for the interruption, and now, let's get back to the story. The next day, as the sun rose, Isaac found himself back at the lab. His mind was a whirlwind of plans and strategies, each one more daring than the last. "I have to save them. I have to make things right. Calling the authorities is useless, though. The government is involved in this too. What the hell?" he muttered to himself, as he started to gather the tools he would need for his mission. He knew he was walking a tightrope. A single misstep could cost him his job, his freedom, even his life. But the alternative was far worse. He couldn't stand by and let innocent people be used as lab rats, not when he could do something about it. He began by hacking into the lab's mainframe, using his knowledge of the system to bypass the security measures. His fingers flew over the keyboard, his eyes scanning the data as it rushed past. He downloaded the floor plans of the lab, the security protocols, the shift schedules. Every piece of information was a weapon, a tool he could use to bring down the horrific operation. Next, he gathered the physical tools he would need: a lockpick set, a stun gun, a small medical kit. He packed them carefully into a bag, his mind running through various scenarios, planning for every possible contingency. He knew he couldn't afford to make any mistakes, not when so many lives were at stake. As he prepared himself mentally for the task ahead, Isaac's mind was filled with images of the people he was trying to save. The haunted faces, the pleading eyes, the broken bodies, each one a stark reminder of the horrors that awaited them if he failed. "I won't let you down, I promise," he whispered, his voice echoing in the empty lab. With a deep breath, Isaac steeled himself for the task ahead. He knew what he was about to do was dangerous, maybe even suicidal. But he also knew that he couldn't turn his back on the people he was trying to save. He had to try, had to do whatever it took to free them from their nightmare. "I'm coming for you," he muttered, his fingers tightening around the bag as he stepped into the stairs, descending once again into the lab of horrors. As the clock struck midnight, Isaac, with a determined look in his eyes, began executing his meticulously planned rescue operation. "This is it. It's now or never," he whispered to himself as he slipped into the dark corridors of the lab. Isaac moved stealthily, avoiding the watchful eyes of the security cameras to avoid the same mistake as before. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm, to stick to the plan. He used his lockpick set to open the cells, freeing the prisoners one by one. The sight of their joy, their disbelief, their tears of relief gave him the strength to continue. But as Isaac was on the brink of completing his mission, his worst nightmare came to life. The lead scientist, a man with a chilling smile and cold, calculating eyes, confronted him. "I knew you would come back, Isaac. Shame. You're smart, but you were always too soft, too weak," he said, his voice echoing in the silent lab. The lead scientist, emotionlessly, drew a pistol and executed Isaac with 2 shots in the chest before he had time to reach for the stun gun, ending his brave attempt to unveil the lab of horrors. Isaac, despite his best efforts, was overpowered. In the aftermath of Isaac's daring rescue attempt, the lab was thrown into chaos. The prisoners, now free, began to fight back, using the confusion to their advantage. Their eyes, once filled with fear, now shone with determination and a glimmer of hope. They had been given a second chance, and they wouldn't let it go in vain. They banded together, their collective strength overpowering the lead scientist and a handful of guards. They seized control of the lab, turning the tables on their captors. The cold, sterile lab echoed with the sounds of rebellion, of freedom. As they made their final escape through the labyrinthine corridors of the lab, they couldn't help but think of Isaac. His courageous act had sparked this rebellion. His sacrifice had not been in vain. It was his bravery that had given them a fighting chance. The prisoners managed to escape the lab, vowing to expose its horrors to the world. They promised to bring the people behind the lab to justice, to ensure that no one else would suffer their fate. Isaac's story may have ended, but the fight against the lab of horrors was just beginning. His spirit lived on in the hearts of the prisoners, in their fight for justice. His sacrifice had given them hope and the courage to fight back. And so, dear viewers, we draw the curtain on this thrilling tale of Isaac's daring rescue attempt. Thank you for joining us on this rollercoaster ride of emotions, mystery and rebellion. In our next series, we'll delve into another world, another life, with its own struggles and triumphs. We promise it will be just as enthralling, if not more. Until next time.